The canals of England, Scotland, and Wales came into existence in the mid-1700s when Britain was an agrarian society and horses were the primary source of transportation. Sir Francis Egerton, the 3rd Duke of Bridgewater, and his engineering friend James Brindley built the first canal in the northwest of England. The purpose was to move Egerton's coal to the emerging factories in Manchester. Encouraged by the Duke's success, others quickly followed suit. By the early 1800s, the man-made waterway covered more than 5,000 miles, and it served as the internal transportation system for Britain's Industrial Revolution. Abandoned by industry today, the canals have become a playground for holiday boaters, traveling in the wake of history. A logical and attractive place to begin a canal journey is near where the waterway system began, the northwest of England at Nantwich. From here, it is a gentle 44 miles to Llangollen in Wales. Located in the heart of the beautiful South Cheshire countryside, close to the Welsh border, Nantwich is an ancient market town dating back to Roman times. It prospered as a major salt-producing center from the 2nd century well into the 19th century, and today it has a somewhat diversified economy, including tourism. Nantwich was virtually destroyed by fire in the late 1500s. Rebuilding took place with the help of Queen Elizabeth I, leaving this town with a wealth of black and white half-timbered buildings, some of them slightly askew today, but nonetheless extremely attractive. Its colorful history, strategic location in the northwest, and a growing reputation as an antique center make Nantwich an increasingly popular tourist stop today. Located right on the main line of the Shropshire Union Canal, Nantwich is also very popular with vacationing boaters. At the busy boat basin here, there's a fleet of 40 self-hire holiday boats maintained by the British Waterways Board. These boats, like most others on the canals today, are replicas of the old working canal boats from a couple of hundred years ago. Now, however, they come complete with gas-powered hot water heaters, stoves, refrigerators, all the comforts of home. The boats range in size from 30 to 70 feet long, and they sleep from 2 to 12 people in solid comfort. Rental prices range from about $600 to $1,200 per week, depending upon the size of the boat and the time of the year. The boats are powered by small diesel engines, steering is done with a single rudder, and the speed limit is a breathtaking 4 miles per hour. From the boat basin here at Nantwich, there are a variety of directional choices for the holiday boater: south to London, north to Chester, east to Stoke-on-Trent, or west to Wales. West is the choice that most people make because the 44-mile-long Llangollen Canal into Wales is considered by many people to be among the prettiest that Britain has to offer, and it also contains the greatest variety of interesting canal features in a relatively short distance. These narrow boats require very little physical effort to operate, but novice boaters quickly discover that steering a straight course with a slow responding single rudder system does require just a little bit of practice. These canals are very, very narrow, and absolutely anyone can run a boat aground occasionally, but running a boat into a tree is not nearly so common. It is an interesting experience, however, especially in the springtime when the countryside comes alive with flowers of all kinds, like this snow-white hawthorn tree. Cruising on Britain's canals is really not all fun and games for the holiday boater. Discredited navigators have to operate the gates on the locks throughout the system, a relatively easy task, despite what some lightweight crew members might have you believe. The locks are water chambers, and they're designed to take boats up or down in the hilly countryside in England. Some skilled boatmen enter these locks under power, while others pull their boats in here by hand tow line. Either way, once the boat is inside the lock, the gate is firmly closed behind it. Then a crew member, using a hand winch supplied with the boat, cranks open a series of panels in the lower part of the gate. When the panels have been opened, a torrent of water floods into the chamber, filling the chamber in a matter of minutes. Depending upon the size of the chamber, each locking operation requires the use of 40,000 to 60,000 gallons of water. Each lock will raise or lower a boat 6 to 8 feet, and each locking operation takes roughly 10 minutes. Where the canal level changes greater than 8 feet, a set or a flight of locks is installed, and the operation is simply repeated over and over again until the boat has been brought to the next level. Once the boat has reached the next level, a crew member pushes the lock gates open, and the canal journey continues on another level. There is a small amount of wildlife along the canals, and it's amazing how quickly the young ducklings learn that every passing boater is a soft touch for a handout. There are also human attractions here, and one of the brightest is artist Robert Brown. Robert says he began painting as a young man, but his budding art career was interrupted by something called the Second World War. After the war, he worked as a local school teacher to earn a living for his family. Upon retirement from teaching a few years ago, Robert resumed his painting, and today he says he especially enjoys working along the canals because of their unique history and brilliant colors. One of his paintings, the lift bridge scene, is unique to the Llangollen Canal in Britain. A lift bridge, of course, is just that. It is a counterbalance system that requires a certain amount of physical effort to nudge the balance off-center so the bridge can be lifted open. Once the extension is all the way up, boaters negotiate the narrow opening carefully, close the bridge behind them so that local vehicle traffic, pedestrians, and livestock can cross the canal, and then continue on up the waterway. The only real danger here is the remote possibility of the boat cabin scraping that elevated bridge while passing underneath. Swans are pleasantly abundant along the canals in Britain, and where there's a graceful mother swan, her cygnets are not far behind. The Welsh border is very close to Nantwich, and the proud Welsh people extend a friendly welcome in their own language as well as English. One of the Llangollen Canal's more interesting physical features is the Chirk Aqueduct. Opened in 1801, this aqueduct parallels a train viaduct, and both of them span the Ceiriog River in Wales. The aqueduct is 700 feet long and carries boat traffic 70 feet above the valley floor. The best view for boaters is off to the west through one of the viaduct arches, framing that evergreen Welsh countryside. It only takes a few minutes to cross the aqueduct, and once safe and sound on the other side, boaters are faced with another adventure on the canals, the quarter-mile-long Chirk Tunnel. This tunnel is very straight, has excellent ventilation, so it is possible to motor through here very slowly, rather than having to turn the engine off and pull the boat through by hand tow line like they do in some tunnels. For those of you who get a little bit nervous when the lights go out, it does help to remember there really always is light at the other end of the tunnel, and there just a short distance away is the most outstanding engineering achievement in the entire canal system, the Pont Caselta Aqueduct. This massive structure was designed by Thomas Telford, Britain's foremost canal engineer. 19 slender arches of stone and masonry carry an 8-foot-wide iron trough filled with water, 126 feet above the Welsh River Dee, spanning more than 1,000 feet across the valley floor. The aqueduct was opened in 1805, and it has been in continuous use ever since, with only minor, periodic maintenance. More than a mere aqueduct, the Pont Caselta is also an elegant monument to the engineering skill and daring of one Thomas Telford. And when you point the nose of your boat toward the trough opening and head out onto Telford's aqueduct, you are embarking on a rather unique travel adventure. 126 feet above the valley floor on a floating platform that the best engineers of the day, except for Thomas Telford, said simply would not stand. For those afraid of heights, it may seem like an eternity, but it really only takes about 10 minutes to cross the aqueduct. On the other side, the always busy Trevor Boat Basin is a convenient stopping place for boaters who find all of the facilities they need while cruising the canals: fresh water, sewage disposal dumping stations, fuel for the boat, and at the Telford Inn, food for the crew. From an upstairs dining room table at the pub, diners can watch boating activity right outside the window, and as evening approaches, those with a good imagination might hear a faint peal of laughter echoing through the centuries, it would be the rich, melodious sound of the man who laughs last. Thomas Telford, some people say, still haunts the site of his greatest glory, the mighty Pont Caselta, the most outstanding engineering achievement in Britain's canal system. Nestled in the hills at the western end of this beautiful valley is the town that gave this canal its name, Llangollen. Once a major coal mining town, Llangollen today is a pretty and popular center for tourism. Motorists still flood through here on their mad dash from London to the wild north coast of Wales, but more and more of them are stopping off a while now to enjoy the beauty and tranquility of Llangollen on the Welsh River Dee. The canal itself runs along the side of a steep hill above the town, and here the pace becomes even more leisurely for holiday boaters. Diesel power gives way to horsepower here, a romantic contact with those early canal days when all of the boats were pulled by horses. Here the canal also narrows almost to the width of one of these boats, 7.5 feet, and there are no turnaround points beyond the center of town, so self-hire boaters have to leave their motorized boats behind and join the common everyday tourist if they really want to see this part of the canal. Eventually, the waterway becomes too narrow even for the horse-drawn boat, and it is necessary to get off and walk the final half mile to Horseshoe Falls, a man-made dam across the River Dee where the canal actually begins. Thomas Telford constructed the falls here to create an energized source of water for the Llangollen Canal, which in turn supplies water for a large part of the canal system throughout all of northwest England. Horseshoe Falls still meets the original purpose of providing 8 million gallons of water every day. Another attraction for visitors here is a place called Plas Newydd, a half-timber house that is more than 300 years old. In the late 1700s, the home was acquired and occupied by two ladies, Eleanor Butler and Sarah Ponsonby. The ladies of Llangollen, as they came to be known, had a passion for ornate black woodwork that covers much of their house inside as well as outside. Over the years, the ladies entertained nobility and members of the artistic community in Britain. Among their regular visitors were Sir Edmund Burke, the Duke of Wellington, and Sir Walter Scott. After they passed away, the ladies' home was maintained through community effort, and it's now open to the paying public for tours. And these ladies would probably not be at all upset to learn that 80-year-old Lewis Davis, who gives tours of their home, is also in charge of raising the flags for an event that has put Llangollen back on the map again today, the annual International Music Festival, the Eisteddfod. Normal attendance at this major musical event every July is about 100,000 happy, musically inclined people. However, that figure doubles when other flags are joined by one special standard and the festival becomes a royal affair, host to the very popular Prince and Princess of Wales, Charles and Diana. With or without royalty, however, the Eisteddfod is truly an international event of major importance, with singers, dancers, and musicians coming here from all over the world. Last year, more than 35 countries were represented in the competition, including a very popular entry from the United States. Formal competition takes place inside a temporary marquee and features everything from choral groups to solo singers and instrumentalists of all kinds. The event was started shortly after the Second World War in an effort to help promote world harmony and world peace, very similar to the Festival of the Arts in Edinburgh. In keeping with the spirit of this occasion, residents of the town and the surrounding area open their homes to these performers, and they provide free lodging and free meals for the entire week. The performance marquee seats roughly 7,000, and some of the seats are free, but for those who don't like sitting inside at any cost, organizers have also erected a speaker system that spreads the sound of music outside for the enjoyment of absolutely everyone. Weather permitting, many of the dance groups gather outside to show their appreciation of this venue of international brotherhood by giving impromptu performances. One of the most popular groups in recent years has been the enthusiastic and colorfully costumed folk dancers from Turkey. Another attractive and interesting section of the canal system meanders north from Nantwich a very short distance to Chester. Despite all of the soothing beauty along the canals, most travelers eventually find themselves wondering about more mundane forms of sustenance, like food. There's a noticeable lack of supermarkets along the canals, to be sure, but no need to worry because the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well in the form of canal-side food stands offering all kinds of fresh items for sale. In addition, of course, stores in the little towns along the canal offer everything needed to prepare nutritious and delicious meals in the well-equipped kitchen aboard the boat. Gas stoves and gas-powered hot water heaters provide all the comforts of home. Even portable TVs are available here with advanced reservations. And just like home, when there are dishes to be done, you can rest assured the man of the house can be found absorbed with far more important matters like entertaining the neighbors who stop by to see what's going on. On the outskirts of Chester is the imposing site of Chemistry Lock. And judging by this sign, the lock is tended by a terribly optimistic gardener. Once past Chemistry Lock, the canal flows through a highly industrialized section of Chester, a clear reminder of what this now peaceful waterway system helped create about 200 years ago. That's one of the enriching attractions of traveling the canals today. You're never far from history with all of its warts and all of its beauty. And speaking of history, once the canal leaves the industrial area, it suddenly curves around a very steep rock cutting. High above is the Tower of King Charles I, anchoring one corner of the formidable wall that surrounds this lovely old town. The wall was built by the Romans in the 1st century, and it has been modified ever since by Anglo-Saxons who started their work in the 10th century. It's still possible to walk a 2-mile circle around the oldest part of the city without ever leaving the wall. East Gate is the main entrance to the city center, and here you'll find one of the most popular sights along the wall, a colorful clock erected over the walkway in 1897. Not far away, however, is a far more important attraction, historically speaking, the remains of a Benedictine abbey built in 1092 by St. Anselm and the Earl of Chester. The abbey flourished here for more than 500 years. Steeped in history and encircled by its ancient walls, Chester is a striking and delightful old town that seems in many ways not to have noticed the passing of time. But inside these 500-year-old Tudor-style buildings downtown, you'll find the Rose, an ultra-modern shopping center built right out over the street. Window shopping is a popular pastime here, and these elegant candles are a favorite souvenir for visitors to the ancient walled city of Chester. Southeast of Nantwich on the Trent and Mersey Canal is the little pottery town of Stoke-on-Trent. This area, like all of England for that matter, is literally overflowing with beautiful wildflowers in the springtime. And if you can't smell those huge English wild roses as you travel along the canal, then by golly, you're just going too doggone fast. The early part of this trip still has you in Cheshire, the prime dairy county in England, producer of millions of gallons of milk and tons of butter and cheese. The incredibly green countryside here is dotted with dairy herds, and cruising slowly through the area, it's relatively simple to get decent pictures of the pastoral scenery. And if you look a little bit closer than the average holiday boater and try just a little bit harder, you might come up with some udder pictures too. A short distance east and south of Nantwich, the Trent and Mersey Canal winds its way through the warehouse district of Stoke-on-Trent, home for some of the world's most famous potteries. In earlier days, this particular canal was used to bring in flint, clay, and coal for the manufacturing process, and of course to ship out finished products cheaper, quicker, and safer than ever before. Today, some factories like Wedgwood still use this waterway, albeit in a very limited fashion to be sure. They transport finished products from the production areas into roadside or railside warehouses to await final shipment all over the world. A gentleman by the name of Josiah Wedgwood was instrumental in the construction of the Trent and Mersey Canal a couple of hundred years ago, an important part of the canal system that eventually helped introduce Wedgwood's elegant pottery to the world outside of rural England. One of Josiah's many masterpieces was a copy that he made of the celebrated Barbrini or Portland vase, which dates back to the time of Christ. It was made using Wedgwood's own process of black and white unglazed jasper, shown here with an earlier copy of the original Barbrini vase, which was made of glass. Wedgwood's jasperware was his pride and joy, the result of 10,000 recorded experiments. It can be stained a variety of colors, maroon, yellow, green, black, or used for portraits in bold black and white relief. Wedgwood's factory showroom is still located near the banks of the Trent and Mersey Canal today, within easy walking distance for holiday boaters who can, if they happen to be so inclined, purchase a Wedgwood chess set done in the classic pattern for only about $3,000. Visitors may also tour the demonstration area, where they will find highly skilled artisans at work. Watching these 20th century craftsmen like Ken Baddeley and Janice McNaughton creates just a bit of an eerie feeling, a feeling that these people are only partly of our time. They reach back more than 2 centuries to the secret formulas, even the incredible spirit of Josiah Wedgwood. Then they blend these with their own unique skills to produce the precious pieces of elegant pottery, which we still call Wedgwood. All of the work here, to one degree or another, is still done by hand, and that means that each piece, including the ornamental designs, has an individuality of its own, the result of individual craftsmanship instead of the uniformity of machine mass production. Once Justin Redfern has applied the final ornament, this posy pot will be fired in a kiln. The chemical properties of that clay pot and the design will each react to the heat treatment in its own way, creating in this case the traditional blue and white, which we all recognize as Wedgwood. South from Nantwich, by way of several different canals, is London Town. The popular Shropshire Union Canal is nice and wide, but not nearly spacious enough for one helmsman who almost collides with a cruiser full of vacationers. Occasionally, these weekend cruisers are so overloaded, they have to bring along a spare bedroom to handle the crowds. About halfway down the Shropshire Union, near a pretty little place called Norbury Junction, is one of the most peaceful canal stretches anywhere in the system. This is the Grub Street Cutting, and here, obviously, the trees line the banks very densely, and in doing so, create a green canopy of almost motionless reflections. Just south of Norbury Junction, the tree-lined banks give way to fern-covered rock walls. The canal was cut through this region by men using not dynamite and heavy machinery, but primitive picks, shovels, and their bare hands. In some places, the canal cuts here are 80 feet deep and more than a mile long, right through solid rock, making this area a living monument to the working men who built the canals in England. Fortunately, employees of the British Waterways Board, a government agency, have slightly more modern equipment to keep the canals functional today. Rain washes an awful lot of mud from the surrounding farmland into these canals, and the wake from speeding boaters violating that 4-mile-per-hour speed limit, that wake breaks the canal walls down in some places and dumps even more sediment into the shallow waterway. Workmen dredge tons of muck and debris from the canals every year in an obvious effort to keep the system navigable for holiday boaters. The Waterways Board and many private supporters believe the canal system is a unique historical monument, well worth all of the time and money which preservation and maintenance require. At the southern end of the Shropshire Union Canal is Birmingham, England's most highly industrialized city. Birmingham has its own canal system, and during the early 1800s, they were bustling with horse-drawn boats hauling coal to the factory furnaces and hauling out iron and steel to be shipped all over the world. Today, Birmingham's industrial canals have been cleaned up for holiday boaters, and they feature floating pubs and canal shops. Continuing south of here on the Grand Union Canal, you will arrive at Coventry, which has a small canal system all of its own. Among other things, the Coventry Basin is a playground for local children. They're far too young, of course, to remember a terrible night in November of 1940 when the German Luftwaffe virtually wiped out their city in what the English call an especially foul raid. One of the few things left standing the next morning was the magnificent medieval tower and spire of the Cathedral of St. Michael. There's a new church right next door, but visitors are drawn like a magnet to the tragic beauty of these remains, which serve as a silent tribute to the folly of war and to the resilience of the human spirit. Small sections of the cathedral chancel also remain standing, and the ruins were cleaned up by German prisoners of war. They left behind them two crosses, one made of charred beams from the ceiling, and another made from the ancient nails which held the ceiling beams in place for centuries. These prisoner workers also carved into the ruins of the chancel an eloquent plea in two very simple words. Farther south on the Grand Union Canal is Stoke Brune. Gracing the banks here is a lockkeeper's house, a sturdy red brick home located very near a beautiful double-arched bridge, and the British Waterways Museum. Thousands of school children, seemingly millions of school children from all over the country, come to Stoke Brune and the Waterways Museum every summer. They come, of course, to learn a little bit about canal history. Some of them enjoy that learning experience, and some obviously equally enjoy creating laundry for Mom. Outside the museum, visitors can examine a model locking operation, and then they're ready for Chapter 2 of their history lesson here, a tour inside the museum. One of the most colorful relics on display inside is a piece of crochet work, a fanciful ear cover, if you will, designed to protect the horse's ears from those pesky flies. Also on display here is the Sunny Valley, a brightly colored replica of one of the old working canal boats. You can peer inside to see what home was like for the people who lived and worked on the canals in the 1800s. Brass and lacework were used to decorate the living space. Many of the canalmen and their families lived in and called these 7-foot square areas the only home they ever knew. Another attraction occasionally found here when he happens to be working in this area is a very special young canal artist by the name of Ron Huff. Ron's artistic efforts are restricted to painting the colorful and decorative devices that appear on the traditional narrowboats. These are the mysterious roses and castles decorations, an art form peculiar to the canals of Britain. No one knows the exact origin of the roses and castles design. Some people believe it was once a gypsy art form. Whatever the origin, it is highly stylized, and Ron Huff is one of only 2 or 3 artists in all of England qualified to practice it today. The origin of roses and castles may be a mystery, but there's no doubt about the future. It is bright and growing brighter in the talented hands of Mr. Ron Huff. In addition to the great abundance of beauty and history, there are a number of rather unusual sights along the canals. One of the more humorous and memorable is an English fishing tournament. On these sunny occasions, there's a fisherman seated every 50 feet, all perfectly spaced in a long straight line that can stretch away for a mile or more along the canal. Devoted sons of Isaac Walton, one and all. Another memorable sight, not so readily noticeable to the casual observer, can be found on the wall edges under some of the bridges spanning the canals. Cast iron bridge protectors were thoughtfully installed here during horse-drawn days to keep the tow ropes from carving into the stone. The ropes proceeded to carve into the iron just about as fast. At Cosgrove, there's an elegant example of bridge carving of another kind. It involved the entire bridge. During the 1800s, many noblemen resented the canals being cut through their land, and in return for this right-of-way, they demanded that the necessary bridges match the architectural styles of their own castles. This Gothic beauty at Cosgrove is a classic example. And any cruise on the Grand Union Canal has to include a stop at Bulbourne, because this is where they make those enormous wooden gates for the hundreds of locks throughout the canal system. The gates are made of good old English oak, and the first step in the process is to reduce these huge, rough planks to the right size with the use of a thickness planer. Once this very basic step has been completed, a special mortising chisel is used to drill a series of square holes in precisely the right spots. These will receive the squared-off tenons in the crossbeams to make a strong, secure joint for the heavy pieces in the gate. Once all of the pieces have been properly assembled, the 1-ton gate will be immersed for several days in a chemical bath. This is a treatment process that leaves the wooden gate almost rot-proof and ready for use in any of the locks throughout Great Britain's Great Canal system. South of Bulbourne, the waterway slowly yields its pastoral image in favor of a cosmopolitan atmosphere. Venerable old London town on the banks of the Thames with all the sights and sounds so familiar to world travelers today. Painted punks originated in London, and they still see themselves as an ultra-modern touch on the local scene, and maybe they are, but while this is certainly the acme of hairdos, head adornments are hardly new to London. People in Trafalgar Square have been doing stranger things with their heads for a long time now. Along the Thames, under the proud Union Jack, there's a far quieter side of London. Not far from the 900-year-old Tower of London is a place called Little Venice. Little Venice is the heart of London's boating community. From here, aboard a private canal boat or aboard a public tour barge, you can cruise the Regent's Canal. Right through the heart of London, certainly one of the largest, one of the busiest cities anywhere in the world, you will find the peace and tranquility that is uniquely Great Britain's Great Canals. Maida Hill Tunnel is only one of many which you will pass through on your tour here. Regent's Canal passes very few industrial areas. It is instead devoted an awful lot more to recreation. Canal towpaths can be hiked for miles, and what with its tree-lined banks, small picnic areas, and floating restaurants, this is unquestionably the finest stretch of urban canal anywhere in the country today. On the right bank here lies Regent's Park. Originally this park was part of Henry VIII's great hunting forest, and after cruising past Lord Snowdon's aviary here, you can go ashore and visit one of the most diversified zoos anywhere in the world today. Because of the great variety of bird and animal life and the well-maintained grounds, the zoo is very popular with Londoners as well as visitors. A short distance down the Thames is another popular attraction, the Royal Botanic Gardens. Also known as Kew Gardens, it has to be one of the world's greatest bargains. Once absolutely free, there is now an admission charge of about 1 cent per person per day. During early springtime, there's a $1 million site at Kew Gardens. The evergreen grounds are splashed with more than 500 varieties of incredibly beautiful azaleas and cascading walls of rhododendron. Windsor lies just to the west of London, and Windsor Castle looms high above the River Thames, its 230-foot round watchtower dominating the entire scene. This is the largest inhabited castle in the world today. Queen Victoria conducted an awful lot of her long reign from here, virtually as a recluse after the death of her beloved husband, Albert. Victoria's statue, polished daily, sternly watches for the approach of her Queen's Guard, which is changed here every day amidst the appropriate pomp, circumstance, and ceremony. In contrast to the almost gentle nature of the narrow canals in England and Wales, up in Scotland, they built on a far grander scale. The Scots in the mid-1800s conceived and constructed a canal system to move seagoing ships from the North Sea to the Atlantic Ocean, right through the spectacular Great Glen. The 60-mile-long geological gash that made the Caledonian Canal possible is only fully appreciated from the air. From this vantage point, you can clearly see the natural fault carved by the last ice age some 10 million years ago, a phenomenon that almost made the Scottish Highlands one big island. The aerial perspective also enables you to see how the man-made canals join the natural lakes in the Great Glen, Loch Lochy, Loch Oik, and Loch Ness, and in doing so, created an absolutely spectacular playground for recreational boaters. The city of Inverness sits on the edge of the Moray Firth in the North Sea at the north end of the Caledonian Canal. About midway in the system, at the south end of Loch Ness, is the town of Fort Augustus. A logical place to begin a tour of this waterway is the extreme southern end of the canal, under the rugged face of Ben Nevis, Britain's highest mountain at 4,400 feet, in the little town of Fort William. Fort William, like an awful lot of Scotland, certainly has a colorful history. In the 17th century, it was the site of a major military installation named after King William of Orange, and that fort, long since dismantled, gave the town its name. The town of Fort William also played a key role in one of Scotland's sadder aspects. It served as one of the emigration centers for thousands of Scots who were dislocated during the infamous Highland clearances. Today, Fort William is a bustling shopping center and a very popular tourist town, often called the gateway to the Highlands, as a matter of fact. Scottish crafts are very popular with visitors, like throughout the country. The stores here are bulging with a vast variety of craft items, many of them made right here in town. On the edge of town, the Caledonian Canal begins in a sea-level boat basin at the head of Loch Linnhe. It rather quickly begins a somewhat precipitous climb up a flight of 8 lochs called Neptune's Staircase. Each step in the staircase takes a boat up or down 8 feet for a total rise or fall of 64 feet here at Neptune's Staircase. In the entire length of the Caledonian Canal, there are 29 lochs, taking boats up 106 feet and then back down 106 feet. Looking at the size of this loch, it's obvious that the Caledonian Canal is a lot different than the narrow man-made waterway system in England and Wales. Fortunately, this loch system in Scotland is no longer manually operated like the lochs in England and Wales. Loch keepers like Robert Ennis do all of the work on the Caledonian Canal, operating the controls of this totally mechanized system. When Robert twists the dials, the water seems to explode into this chamber. To move a boat up or down 8 feet here requires the use of 750,000 gallons of water, compared to about 60,000 gallons of water to accomplish basically the same thing in one of the narrow lochs down in England. For a different kind of size perspective, consider that 16 cabin cruisers can squeeze into one of these lochs at the same time. In fact, the system was designed to handle seagoing boats up to 150 feet long with a draft of 13.5 feet. The original purpose of the Caledonian Canal was to enable seagoing ships to bypass the long journey around the north coast of Scotland. Most ocean-going vessels are far too big for the Caledonian Canal today. However, the waterway is still very popular with smaller fishing and sailboats during the summer. Most holiday boating on the Caledonian Canal is done in 32-foot cabin cruisers that rent for about $600 per week. Like the narrow boats in England, they come fully equipped with gas stove, refrigerator, hot water shower, safety gear, even a map. The map marks navigational hazards, notes good mooring spots, and comments on places of interest along the way. The speed limit on the Caledonian Canal is 6 miles per hour. Although there's plenty of maneuvering room, even for a novice boater, most people don't want to go that fast when they cruise through the spectacular scenery of Scotland's Great Glen. Beginning in the early springtime, the Scottish landscape, including the banks of the Caledonian Canal, has a distinctive yellow cast. This splash of nature's paint comes from 2 wildflowers. Most prominent of these is the prolific gorse, a rather prickly character that has color as its only saving grace. A far more willowy cousin, not nearly as plentiful as gorse, but equally brilliant in color, is the very delicate broom. A cast-iron structure called Moy Bridge spans the Caledonian Canal about 7 miles from the top of Neptune's staircase. This elegant hand-powered swing bridge is the last of its kind on the Caledonian Canal. It was erected here in 1821, and it is still in working condition. Fortunately for holiday boaters, however, there is a bridge tender here today. His name is Ian Cameron. Ian lives in a government-supplied home right along the banks of the canal, practically on top of his work for that matter. And when a boat approaches, Ian and his faithful companion, Sweet, stride out to open the bridge the old-fashioned way, by hand. Despite the rugged nature of his work, Ian believes he has the best job in the world. It's the beauty of the place and the solitude that he really loves. His only company, except for Sweet and a few passing boaters, is a large collection of classical music and literature. Most holiday cruisers are narrow enough that Ian only has to crank open one side of the bridge. Once the half span is open and locked firmly into place, boaters glide through here with the greatest of ease, having experienced at least a small piece of Caledonian Canal history in operation. When a bigger boat comes along, however, Ian does have to open both halves of the swing bridge, and there's really only one way to do that. He jumps in his little boat, rows to the other side, and cranks her open. During the summer, when holiday boat traffic is heavy, Ian repeats this process 50 to 60 times every day. A right of access agreement requires the bridge be kept closed at all times when not in use, so the farmers in this area can move their livestock from one side of the canal to the other without having to wait. But even that's a small price to pay for a man who truly believes he has the world's most perfect job. Beyond Moy Bridge, the canal gently winds its way through the Scottish countryside. A few miles away is Gairlochie, and here a bay-windowed lockkeeper's house as old as the canal itself. In fact, that dreamer and builder of canals, Thomas Telford, stayed in the upstairs bedroom here when he came to oversee work on the Caledonian Canal during the early 1800s. Continuing north from the top lock at Gairlochie, there's only a short stretch of seagull-laden canal before reaching a little lighthouse that marks the entrance to Loch Lochy, the first of the Caledonian system's natural lakes. Loch Lochy is 14 miles long, a mile across at its widest point, and about 450 feet deep at the deepest spot. After the coziness of the man-made canal, all of this water can be a little bit unsettling for a novice boater. Boating veterans simply find it a place of incredible beauty. Either way, a few hours of steady cruising will bring you to the north end of Loch Lochy. Here at picturesque Logan Locks, there are excellent overnight facilities, including a small dock area and some remote mooring spots where all too rarely Mother Nature bathes the scene with one of her glorious golden sunsets. In the crystal clarity of a well-scrubbed Scottish morning, there's absolutely nothing like a bowl full of calorie-free strawberries to get the day off to a good start. Properly fortified and with the ship's larder restocked from a canal-side store here, the next step is to climb the two parts of Logan Locks to the highest point on the Caledonian Canal, 106 feet above sea level. At the top of the locks is another man-made part of the Caledonian. This area is called the Logan Cutting, and it represents the most difficult engineering problem encountered by those waterway builders in the 1800s. They had to widen the natural valley here and then reinforce the canal walls because the cut was right through the east-west watershed. Water cascaded down the steep hillsides and into this valley from both directions, placing extreme pressure on the artificial canal. A pleasant 30-minute cruise through this tree-lined stretch will bring you into another natural body of water, Loch Oik. It is one of the prettiest lakes in all of Scotland and home for the new Great Glen Water Park. The park, perched rather precariously on the banks of Loch Oik, has quickly become a very popular spot for summer vacationers. There are 25 well-appointed cottages here. They sleep from 4 to 8 people each, and they can be rented by the day as well as by the week. Fishing and a host of other activities are available for park guests, not only for park guests really, but also for holiday boaters who stop by to check out the scenery. Everything from water skis and rowboats to windsurfers and pedal boats are available for rent here, or those who have the oblivious spirit of the young can just frolic in this 50-degree water until their heart's content, or until they turn blue, whichever comes first. For those who only have a short time to spend on the canal, managers here also rent cruisers by the day as well as by the week. Loch Oich is the smallest of the canal system's natural lakes at 4 miles in length, but it is also a picture postcard delight for holiday boaters. Leaving the north end of Loch Oich, boaters enter the man-made canal again, and within a very short time they will be approaching Kittra Lochs. Kittra is in a remote highland setting, and it is home for one of the most talented and entertaining characters anywhere along the canal. Her name is Tally, and Tally is a demon at catching boat tow ropes. The only problem is, once she catches the rope, she does not want to let go of it. Tally's a 12-year-old golden retriever, and even though some boaters do not fully appreciate her special skills, she is tireless in her efforts. Tally's master is Chief Lockkeeper Jim Talbert. Jim says Tally's just carrying on where her mother Sally left off. Tally's mother Sally performed these same duties at Kittra Lochs for 14 years. A very pleasant and pretty 1-mile cruise will take you from remote Kittra Lochs to the unofficial midway point on the Caledonian Canal, the little town of Fort Augustus. The most prominent attraction at Fort Augustus is St. Benedict's Abbey and School. This complex was originally a fortress, but it was sold to the Roman Catholic Benedictine Order in 1867. The church then hired Joseph Hansom, better known later for his handsome cabs. They hired Hansom to convert the fort into a school and an abbey. Today, St. Benedict's is a well-respected private school for students from all over the world. The main street of Fort Augustus, however, is a staircase of 5 locks that carries the Caledonian Canal right through the middle of town. Deserted most of the day, the canal becomes a very popular place when boats begin transiting the locks at 8 o'clock every morning. The recent increase in holiday boating here has been an economic boon for towns like Fort Augustus. The canal operates at a financial loss every year, but the government subsidizes the operation because holiday boating is pumping new money into the canal communities and generating jobs throughout this region. An estimated 150,000 people travel the Caledonian Canal each summer, spending some $15 million in the towns along the canal, and that's a very important part of the economy in the economically depressed Scottish Highlands. North from the bottom of the locks at Fort Augustus is Loch Ness, the biggest boating challenge on the canal. Ness is 22 miles long, better than a mile wide at one point, 900 feet deep in a few places, and also the site of some very changeable weather. Holiday boaters, veteran as well as novice, are cautioned to stay off the lake when the weather turns bad because it does get a little bit rough out here at that time. One of the most familiar and popular sites along Loch Ness is the ruins of Urquhart Castle. Historians say there's been a castle on this spot for better than 1,000 years now. In recent times, the castle has become a prime lookout point for hunters of the infamous Loch Ness Monster. And when the weather turns dark and rainy, there's absolutely no limit to what some people think they've spotted in the murky waters of Loch Ness. As real as it might look to those with an active imagination, this is, of course, just a part of a man-made display at the Loch Ness Monster Exhibition Center. The center is in the small town of Drumnadrochit, very near the banks of Loch Ness, and it has become a very popular tourist attraction. In recent years, there have been a number of scientific searches made in an effort to finally substantiate or debunk that confounded monster theory. Tony Harmsworth, the young director of the Exhibition Center, has even written a book on the subject. Tony's book and the exhibition explore all of the available data, including that collected in the scientific searches. So far, there is nothing that has withstood close examination by impartial third parties. Despite this, however, a lot of people continue to believe there really is a monster lurking in the shadowy depths of Loch Ness. A lot of other people, of course, tend to take a slightly less serious approach to the subject of the Loch Ness Monster. Whether or not there's a Loch Ness Monster, there really are monsters of another kind in Scotland, the Highland cattle. These red-headed monsters with a shag hairdo are seen all over the Scottish Highlands, but there's no better place to see them up close than at one of the regional agricultural fairs. Here they are paraded for professional evaluation, along with representatives from other cattle that are bred and raised in Scotland today. This country is widely known for its sheep, but few people seem to know that Scotland is also an emerging center for research in cattle breeding. These magnificent specimens are excellent examples of the progress made to this date. As in all fair competitions, there are certainly prizes to be awarded for the best entries of the day. Despite the huge, handsome cattle on display here, some fairgoers are a lot more impressed with somewhat smaller contestants, members of 11 pure breeds of Scottish dogs. These are the sleek Skye Terriers. Shetland sheepdogs are fondly known as Shelties, and they make excellent pets. The Lassie-type collie was a cow dog in earlier days. The Scottish Deerhound is an aristocratic dog, and the bearded collie is snooty. The Golden Retriever is by far the most popular and most attentive when the smaller dogs are on parade. From the safe harbor near Urquhart Castle, it is still a couple of hours of very steady cruising to reach Loch End and the entrance to the man-made canal that leads toward Inverness. This is, by the way, the deepest section of Loch Ness, where most of those monster sightings have been made in recent years. At Loch End, there's a little lighthouse that marks the entrance to another part of the man-made canal. From here, it is roughly 7 miles into Inverness. There's one more locking operation at a place called Dock Garrick, and then an hour or so of slow cruising will bring you into the Cali Cruiser boat yards, the largest boat rental operation on the canal today. Owner-operator Jim Hogan and his son Jimmy greet visitors and give boat handling demonstrations before turning holiday boaters loose on the canal. Of course, Jim loves renting boats to holidayers. That's how he makes his living. But he also quickly admits the week-long self-hire trip is really not for everyone. For those who want a boating experience on the Caledonian Canal but are not inclined to do it themselves, the Scott II, a British waterways vessel, takes daily cruises through a small port of the man-made canal and out into Loch Ness. Just a short distance from the Cali Cruiser yards, the Caledonian Canal once again meets the ocean at Cloughnahary Sea Loch. For the seagoing vessels, this is where they begin their race to the rich fishing grounds of the North Sea or the even richer ports of northern Europe. For holiday boaters, Inverness is where their Caledonian Canal experience usually begins or ends. Either way, this city is a memorable treat, a busy city that still has time for the quietness of beautiful flower gardens. Attractions like these flower gardens make Inverness one of the most popular tourist stops in Scotland, and in the busy downtown area, visitors quickly find that the Loch Ness Monster, real or imaginary, is certainly big business. Storefronts are overflowing with all kinds of monster souvenirs. Just as popular and even more important economically is the Scotch whiskey business. Last year, the country's distilleries produced about 100 million gallons of pure malt whiskey, generating better than $1 billion for the country's economy, making whiskey one of the country's most important industries, along with oil and tourism. Employees like Mary MacDonald are highly skilled, and they're certainly very proud of their work, and so is Kenny MacLeod, whose lineage has been traced back through 7 generations of Scottish weavers. Kenny uses good old-fashioned foot power to operate this semi-mechanical loom, and with his many years of experience and an awful lot of hard work, Kenny can produce about 5 yards of tartan material in an 8-hour day. Tartan in the various designs of the many Scottish clans may be purchased at the kilt maker's shop in Inverness, designs like this Royal MacGregor being unrolled for the making of a kilt. It takes 8 yards of material to make a bona fide Scottish kilt. Willie Lowe is another of the proud Scots, and he's the man in charge of production at the kilt maker's shop. Once Willie has measured the material, he will carefully mark it in preparation for the cutting and sewing of 27 pleats. The total weight of one of these handmade garments varies, of course, depending upon the weight of the material used. But it is really not at all uncommon to find a kilt that weighs 7 or even 8 pounds. The average cost for a handmade kilt is a modest $175. Willie Lowe and store manager Charles Varley are proud of this product, and Charlie Simpson is also proud of his talent. Charlie was once the heavyweight champion of Scotland's Highland Games. He still straps on these special spike shoes and cranks up the 13-pound hammer with the best of them. Let's watch Charlie prepare for action. Another event at the Highland Games is tossing a 25-pound weight over a bar, a minimum of 10 feet high. And caber tossing is the manly art of lifting, carrying, and throwing an 18-foot-long, 130-pound log of wood. The objective here is to toss this log end over end and have it come down straight in front of you. A non-athletic event at the Highland Games is the playing of the bagpipes. And if you're like me and one of the judges here, you know full well that a bagpipe, no matter how well played, is simply an ill wind that nobody blows good. Most people prefer the skirl of the pipes when it's mixed with the swirl of the tartan as the lassies do their Highland dances. That fierce independent spirit and genuine pride of the people who call themselves Scot still rings loud and clear in the city of Inverness, a city known as the capital of the Highlands, and a city that is clearly the crowning glory of a very special place, the Caledonian Canal, the grandest of all of Great Britain's great canals.